Check.
Alhamdulillah, good. How are you? Good to see you. Yeah. We're gonna be, yeah, both of us are gonna be interpreting forever.
Check. Well, no, I think I've got it. Check, check. Check.
You're gonna bring us to the store?
Check, check. Yeah. Yeah. So the only problem
Both of us
is
are gonna be
right?
doing the online and the in-person using those equipment. So there's no need for us to be there, I guess. They're gonna separate us. Okay.
Turn your lights down low and pull your window
They're
curtain.
gonna just switch to English and just gonna translate it.
Let your moon come shining
And are they gonna give us like a space to for questions or?
in. Ooh, it's been a long
It's upset too. Hey, honey. I seriously hope what they're saying is something true. Hope they tell you you've got heaven in your eyes. Saying you're a blessing wouldn't be a lie. And if they didn't call you sweetness, and if they didn't call you niceness, and how about sugar dumpling? Then I guess they didn't tell you nothing. No. And if they didn't call you sweetness, and if they didn't call you niceness, and how about sugar dumpling? Then I guess they didn't call you nothing. No, 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 no. Brothers keep forgetting they leave their women at home. With lust in their hearts, they keep looking on and on and on and on. Yes, you get something every woman's craving for. I myself wish I had you behind my door. I just don't want to call you sweetness. I just don't want to call you niceness. And how about sugar dumpling? Then I guess they just don't call you nothing.
What we have
DJ Fire.
is something special.
DJ Fire Security.
You, I'll give my all and all. My love is unconditional. Good things come to those who wait. I know your love was worth the wait. My life is complete. Now I found you. No need to search no more. I found what I'm looking for. We've got the real thing, baby.
Hold on to what you got. 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 If you can accept none of criticism, then you know you're on your way. If you can accept on your journey, then you know my heart is a yes, oh yes. Hold on to what you got. Hold on to what you got. Hold on to what you got.
The closer to your mouth this mic is, the better.
You know how much I do.
So the closer, the better it sounds.
That I found somebody to take the place of you. But it's just the feel within me when you touch my hand. And a feel that shakes my body. And I don't understand, so I'm leaving. This time I played its fault. I'm gonna walk away from love.
Check, check.
Before love breaks my heart. Okay.
DJ Fire.
Sitting here watching, side themselves rest. They should all be thinking of getting to know themselves. While life goes on, everyone's got to stand strong. You can't surrender, no, no, no. Giving your heart.
Welcome, 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 everybody. How are we doing? How are we doing?
Good.
Awesome. Round of applause, round of applause. There we go, there we go, there we go. So thank you for making time to be with us today. It's an honor and pleasure to welcome you to the African American Lodge 024 and Banquet Hall. My name is Jameson Davis, and I have the honor and pleasure of being president of the African American Society. The African American Society is a nonprofit located right on the other side of this wall, okay? We're a resilience hub. We're a resilience hub that's dedicated to celebrating the culture, the heritage, and the contributions of the African diaspora. And so it's extremely important, and we take honor and privilege into hosting events like we are today. It's very important for us in terms of why we feel like this is the time to have this event. It's simple for us. You know, as I said, we're an organization that really is about the African diaspora as a whole. And there's a large group of our brothers and sisters right now that need our support. And so without hesitation, we are willing to do just that, all right, and offer our resources where we can. And so I want to take this time to thank the individuals that helped put this together. And so first, I'll start off with Tabitha Sukteo, Executive Director for Connecticut Students for a Dream. Give a wave. And Ms. Kay Holness, Executive Director for JAC, Jamaican American Connection. President. So I'm not going to take too much time because I know obviously ran a little bit late, and I apologize for that. But we appreciate all the work that has been done by the technical team as well. And we have a group of interpreters, also on the other side of the room to make sure this is accessible as possible to everybody that needs this information. Okay, this is extremely important for us, and we wanted to make sure we were offering that information to as many people that need the information. So thank you for making time. Anybody that wants to find out more about the African American Society, you're more than welcome to visit the table. You're more than welcome to visit the JAC table as well, Connecticut Students for a Dream. And I also have to give a shout out to Faith Acts. Faith Acts is a sponsor partner. So thank you for sponsoring and being a part of helping us put this together as well. Without further ado, I will pass it over to Tabitha Sukteo.
Thank you. Thank you everyone so much for being here. Thank you, Jameson. Thank you to the African American Society for hosting us. So the Attorney General wanted to be here today with us, but unfortunately he could not. And so what he's done is that he's sent us over a video. So we'll go ahead and let you guys hear from him.
William Tong. Like many of you, I am the proud son and grandson of immigrants and refugees. And like many of you and millions of Americans, I don't derive my citizenship from my parents or my grandparents. I derive my citizenship from the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. I was the first American citizen in my immediate family by right of my birth on American soil in Hartford, Connecticut. And so that's why I'm fighting so hard for birthright citizenship. That's why I'm fighting so hard for millions of American immigrant families in Connecticut and across the country, because this fight is very personal for all of us. All of us know how hard immigrants fight every single day for every inch. I know because I saw my parents do it, because we did it together as a family in our family's Chinese restaurant. My parents work 7 days a week, 12 to 15 hours a day, and I know there's no Connecticut, there's no America, there's no strong economy, there's no prosperity, there's no freedom without immigrants fighting every single day for their community, for their families, for our country. And so that's why in Connecticut, it is the policy of the state of Connecticut. Let me just make it clear as your Attorney General. It is the policy of the state of Connecticut to protect, honor, and respect immigrants and immigrant families, period. And in many ways, that's what our law says, that's our policy, and we're gonna honor that policy and our law. And so I encourage all of you to continue this fight. I wanna thank you, the African American Society, Connecticut Students for a Dream, the Connecticut Immigrant Support Network, and the Jamaican American Connection. Thank you so much for fighting every single day for immigrant families like mine and yours, and for immigrant families that make up the heart of who we are as a country.
Thank you so much for that. So folks, I think you all know why we're here today, right? But let me give you some context, right? So we're here because of an alarming rise in immigration enforcement. Black immigrants have long faced systemic neglect, invisibility, targeted enforcement, and we're making space tonight to ensure that our people know their rights, that they feel seen, and that they walk away with tools to protect themselves and their families. So we're really thrilled to be joined by an amazing panel tonight. And so we have Sharnette, we have Juan, we have Bishop Selders, and we also have Alexis. And so for you all, I will allow you to introduce yourself. So introduce yourself first, and then the second thing I'd love for you to share with us is what brings you to this work. How does your identity as either a Black immigrant or as a Black person shape how you see this moment? And I think we can definitely start with Alexis first and go down the line.
So good evening, everyone. It's nice to be here. Good to see you. My name is Alexis Smith, and I was born and raised in New Haven and Hamden, and still live here. My current role is I'm the executive director at New Haven Legal Assistance. And so we are an organization that believes in the core value of access to justice and making sure that regardless of your income or wherever you come from or whatever you have, that you can get a lawyer if you need one to preserve some basic human rights. And I think what we're seeing in today's world around immigration is really a denial and attack on a basic human right. So what brings me to this work is, I think, being a part of this community and seeing that there are individuals who are in a space where they are fearful, where they don't want to access certain things that are core to what they need, and knowing that anytime that anyone is oppressed in a community, it's really a threat to all of us. And as someone who was born here and identifies as Black, I know that I have faced, and people that I know and family members in my community have faced oppression in many ways, and that our stories are similar, and that any story of oppression always has similarities to other groups. And so that's really what brings me to this work.
Thank you so much, Alexis. So I'm going to actually take a moment for our viewers online. So hello, everybody online. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you will see a globe, and that globe you can click on and it will tell you the language of choice. So if you cannot hear right now, it's because you have to pick your language. We have English, we have Swahili, Haitian Creole, we have Spanish, and so just click on your language, and we will be sure as panelists and as speakers to speak a little bit more slowly. Thank you so much. So Bishop Selders, over to you.
Hello, I'm John Selders. I'm a pastor in Hartford, Connecticut. Been here now 25 years. Born and have roots in the Midwest. When we arrived here 25 years ago, people would say, yeah, you got this Southern twang, and I would get upset. I'd feel some type of way, Sister Babs. I'd feel some type of way because, you know, St. Louis is not down south. And then I realized I got a whole lot of Southern roots. My mama is from a place called Waynesboro, Mississippi. See how I said that? All of a sudden I went somewhere with it. My paternal family is from East Feliciana Parish, Louisiana. So I got deep Southern roots, which means my Midwestern sensibilities get all kind of twisted up in a kind of Southern ethic with Southern Black American language sauteed all over in there. My work in advocacy is generations long. I'm third generation preacher in my family. So it was all about what was happening in community. Of course, for several generations, that meant the community, at least in part, revolved around the church. It's been mine to find community in other spaces and places, but of course it certainly still has been. My faith has led to the work that I do. I'm a Black man, and I'm not confused about it. And I'm a Black man in America, and that means some certain kinds of things in some certain ways. I also am a citizen of the world. I've traveled some, and so that experience has also lended some experience and truth that I think, you know, it's worthy of having conversation right here in Connecticut, in the midst of this right now moment that has all of us in many ways responding and reacting to some of what I'm going to call, just so I'm clear, some of the nonsense that's taking place.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Attorney Shernette Noise Day Hidon. I was born in Jamaica, came here at the age of 11 years old. And I understand the immigration community a lot more than everyone in this community. We all have family members who were undocumented at one point. My father came here as a farm worker. And because he wanted to better life for his 4 children, he said, I'm not gonna go back. I'm gonna stay here. There's opportunity here that I didn't have in Jamaica that I'm gonna do for my children. For a period of time, he was also undocumented, afraid of immigration coming for him, and he's going back home with nothing. But God opened a door, he got himself legal, he brought us here. While I'm here, I see how family members are mistreated. They're working, not getting paid properly. They're being chastised for a decision that they're making to better their family. And at that time, I was only 15 years old. But I'm like, what can I do? I decided to go to law school with a passion and a mind focused on immigration, to be a help in our community, to be that voice for the fatherless. As the Bible would say, we have to be that voice for someone who doesn't have a food. We are the gatekeepers at this moment for our immigrant community, and that's been a passion for me and my husband, because we're both children of illegal immigrants. We face situations every day that we see our clients that are making decisions that it's hurtful. Some people want to give up. They want to go home. I can't take it anymore. But I always say to a person, fight. Don't just give up. You make a decision. You have a why. You stayed. Just don't give up. Just keep focused. Hold on to whatever it is that brought you to this country. And that's been our mission, is to educate our community. And that is why I wanted to be part of this event today, is just to continue to teach people, educate them about their rights, especially now in this particular time where people are fearful, very fearful.
My name is Juan Hidon Sanchez. I was lucky enough to meet my wife at an immigration conference. And that has kind of, tied us throughout. We share some of the same story. I was born in the Dominican Republic. My father migrated through the Caribbean to the U.S. Virgin Islands, so that's where I have my Caribbean roots. I consider myself Afro-Latino in that sense, because definitely Jamaican culture definitely shaped my early beliefs as far as empowerment, as far as what it is to be in a struggle of identity. Our motto at our firm is that we're a firm of immigrants for immigrants. And to us, that means that our American dream gets to be helping others find theirs. And we feel so, by God, put in this place right now in this situation where we can help others by advocating through them, by educating them, by empowering them, and by helping them see their potential. Not just in remaining in the shadows, but in coming out and living their full potential for themselves, for their families, not just in terms of immigration, but in terms of business, in terms of real estate, in terms of estate planning, looking at long-term family stability. A little bit about my background: I was trained in psychology at Yale, so I started more doing child advocacy, education advocacy. Then I worked with the DEA for a while because I believed that I could fight the war on drugs and perhaps fight for my community in that way. And I discovered totally the opposite. I then began working with reentry population and eventually led me to go to law school just because I wanted to advocate further in the community. And now doing this work, you know, if anything that I want us to take away from this panel is that we need to change the narrative. We need to give people their voice to tell their own stories, not just what's being portrayed in the media, but our identity and the contributions that each and every one of us has and how we can make this community a lot better.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your answers. So the next question I have for you here, and Alexis, I'd love to turn it over to you. And a lot of people are wondering, why is immigration so complicated? Like, why are things changing so quickly? Would you be able to tell us a little bit about what's happening nationally that makes it difficult for the work of lawyers?
Sure. I mean, I really appreciate listening to the Attorney General kind of open us up, because I think we are lucky in the sense that we have an AG and other leaders who are really committed to making sure that our immigrant community is informed and as safe as possible. But even despite that, it doesn't keep us immune from what's happening at the national level. So as many of you know, from day one, this administration just began implementing a whole host of policies that were incredibly harsh, insensitive, and just an attack on our immigrant brothers and sisters. And so one of those that we've seen is the elimination of humanitarian parole for certain individuals. And so I'll describe that a little bit and then kind of talk about how it's manifested itself. So a number of years ago, people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela were given certain protections if they were coming to the United States for certain types of things and certain types of reasons. And they really are reasons that, just from a human standpoint, is what we want, right? What we want to extend an opportunity to individuals to keep them safe. So it may have been people who were targeted in their home country for specific reasons. It was people coming for certain kinds of medical care and health care. It was people who were coming here because they had a family member who had passed away, and so they were coming to a funeral or coming to help with certain kinds of estate planning. And so it allowed people to be here for a period of time, and also, in some circumstances, set people on a path to citizenship. And so this administration has effectively decided to end that opportunity for folks. I'm not sure about the number of people that are impacted here in Connecticut, but it's hundreds of thousands kind of across the country, unfortunately. And so this is just one of those kinds of policies that is really impacting individuals. So one of the things that I would say about that particular, or that as an example of what we're seeing, is just kind of the lack of humanity that we're seeing from this administration, and the lack of sensitivity. And so when we talk about storytelling and hearing how that's impacting folks, that should resonate with all of us, right? Because if we think about any of us in those kinds of situations, not being able to attend a family member's funeral, or not having access to health care, that should sit with all of us in a certain way. And so to the first question about what brings us to the work, I think you heard a theme. What brings us is a commonality of a story and a shared experience from a human standpoint.
Thank you, Alexis. Anybody else? You have anything that you would add to that on a national level?
Well, we were just at the AILA conference in Colorado about 3 weeks ago, and it was very deflating in the sense that I felt that, nationally there were more strategy or united front, but really and truly we are playing defense. And our goal is to definitely educate people so that they can act now rather than later. And I think that's kind of the approach for us to address this. One of the other things that I wanted to add as I was hearing you speak is agriculture and climate change being one of the factors that's driving people away. And when we often have families coming in, I think that there is something to say that part of this conversation also has to involve the leaders of our countries that are creating the conditions that are driving people to migrate, the lack of education, of healthcare. So we should also, as we do the work here, also be demanding more from our countries as well.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to go into some specifics when it comes to what folks should do if they're undocumented and what their rights are. But I'd love to hear from Bishop Selders about, what are you seeing on the ground in churches? Are you seeing folks less likely to go to church? Are you seeing that decline? And what do you think the role of the church is at this point?
So I'm gonna shape this just a little bit different. Faith communities are responding in all kinds of ways, right? There's no monolith of how faith communities are responding, reacting, and are in some ways sticking their head in the ground and not even dealing, right? So there's a full range of responses around faith communities. I want to specifically say within my particular location, which is the Protestant Christian community, we are way around, with some of us are more, to the right of that conversation. So we're evangelical, praise Jesus, and that's it. I mean, it's all about, that rootedness in a very particular Christian context that says that social justice stuff, that's out there. We're just going to praise the Lord and let the chips fall where they may. And that is a group of folk. There are others who are way on the other side of that, who take on the role of using faith as a pivot to be involved in social justice narratives, social justice contexts. So talking here specifically in, so that's a national thing, right? We're all over the place. We're depending on your brand, your version, your setting, your denomination, or as my grandmama would say, your nomination. Depends how you respond and how your leaders are responding within in the context of the faith community that dictates that. I will say here in Connecticut, my experience has been it's been an interesting connection. Part of Tabitha, you and I connected, is you were the only person in this current climate out here on the streets. And people who know me know I'm one of those turn-up preachers. So I'm out there when on some of the issues at sometimes. And so this immigrant, experience and this current time, I'm hearing a lot about brown people. Yeah. Wasn't hearing a whole lot about black people. Now I know, there's brown people and black people, and there's brown black people, and there's all this, we all in this thing. I was hearing a lot about, how brown community people who, talk in a certain way, and I am going to be respectful, but you weren't hearing a lot about black people. And I know a whole lot of undocumented black people, as much as I know some who are not black, who are undocumented. And that conversation was, so I started asking questions quietly. My beloved and I, just a couple of us, how y'all doing? And they way underground. They're not talking about it at all. And so here in Connecticut, it's been very interesting to hear you were the only person I heard even mention that there are black people that may have a struggle, may have some issues with immigrations and their rights. And so when we talk about these kinds of rights, I want to just, can I just do I'm a little bit of a history nerd, and I want to go back to 1857, Dred Scott decision. Chief Justice Roger Taney said in his majority decision report that there are no laws for blacks that white people are bound to respect. 1857. Before the Civil War, before the 13th, 14th, or 15th Amendment, all right? We had you lawyers on this platform, y'all help me here. We had the 5th Amendment, but that wasn't enough for black folk. So we had to create, well, we got the 13th, but then the 14th, right? And then the 15th was we could vote, black men maybe. Not women at all. So you got problems with all of these laws when we try to argue from a legal perspective. But again, I'm faith, right? So there's a moral conversation that I think ought to also be in the midst of this conversation about immigration. Black people are very faithful people. And so let's talk about what leads us into these conversations. And particularly, I'm troubled because while we have these legal precedents, legal stuff, we got folk that don't even care about the law, it seems to me. And in fact, they had broke the law and didn't care. 34 counts worth. So it's a struggle bus. So I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that it is the faith conversation for me is just as important as this legal conversation. And how do we then kind of navigate what community looks like when we got a lot of stuff going on in community? We ain't together, and yet I want to be together. I want to be for you and you be for me. Dr. King said it, you know, we're tied together in a mutual garment of destiny. You know, what affects me, you here, affects me there, vice versa. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Bishop Selders. So I think with that, we're going to go ahead and pivot into the more technical pieces, right? So for the immigration attorneys over there, our question for many folks has to do with, what do I do if I get stopped on the street by ICE? Are there specific things that you would want our community to know? And just to say, as a caveat, things are changing quickly. And you know, the things that we have been telling folks, it feels like it's been changing hour by hour. And so I just want to acknowledge that as you all answer those questions.
Well, yes, I do agree with you. Things are changing very drastically day by day. Even as immigration attorneys, we have to keep up with the news and everything, because the moment we say one thing, maybe an hour later, it's different. The Supreme Court came with a ruling, and you're like, oh, no, you're affecting our rights. You're agreeing with the administration, it's not right. But that is what's going on today. But more importantly, as immigrants, documented or undocumented, whether you're a US citizen, green card holder, or you have no citizenship in this country or resident in this country, we all have rights. We have the right to remain silent. When I mean silent, if a police officer or even ICE stop you, you don't have to answer the question. You could say, my name is Shernette, and that's all I'm going to answer you with. I'm going to exercise my right to remain silent. I will not answer any of your questions unless I have my lawyer present. That officer cannot force you to answer any other questions. You just have to give them a license if they pulled you over. Or if they came to your house, they're knocking at the door. Who are you? I'm police officer. ICE have a thing to say, we're the police. Can I come in? No. Do you have a warrant? You have the right to ask them that question. Do you have a warrant? If that officer say yes, okay, can you slide it under the door, or can you hold it at the window so I can see it? Whose name is on that warrant? If it's John and your name is not John, John does not live here. I will not open the door. Because that's important. Also, the most important thing you have to understand about a warrant, it has to be signed by a judge. And it's not any judge. An immigration judge cannot sign a warrant. It has to be a federal judge or a state court judge, and not an immigration judge, because an immigration judge is an administrative officer. And that's where people get confused. They hear ICE is at the door. Oh my gosh, I'm in a panic. Ah, open the door, yeah. No, calm down, think first, take a couple breaths. Before you even answer any question, breathe. Because I tell my client that even in an immigration interview, breathe. If the officer asks a question and you don't understand, can you please explain that for me again? Or can you repeat that question? Because you have that right to think before you answer anybody's question. Doesn't matter who they are. We all have that right to just, first thing, be calm in any encounter, whether with police, ICE, or anything. Again, if they come to your door and they put up that paper and it says immigration detainer, that is not a warrant, that you don't have to open the door. A detainer is just for ICE to use to tell the police, if say you were arrested by the law enforcement, a detainer is given to the police department and say, don't release this person until I get there in 3 days. That's a detainer, that's not a warrant. But ICE will use it as a tactic. And because you see the document, see immigration on it, they open doors. They answer questions because they're now in panic, they're in fear. And as you, a pastor, know, fear is our worst enemy because it cripples us. We do everything when we're in fear wrong. And it's sometimes too, because ICE will use different tactics. They will have it will call an immigration warrant, but it's still, again, it's not a warrant that is signed by a judge that will let you open your door to immigration. That's one of the most important things you always have to remember. Also, you should say, if they stop you, you're outside in your car, I do not give you the right to search my car nor my house. And if they continue to want to search, you can protest and say, I'm not agreeing to the search, this is unlawful search. You can take out your phone and start recording them and voicing that opinion, saying, I did not agree to this search, you're violating my right, my 4th and 5th Amendment right, you're violating me. Because we have right. And a lot of times, again, our community, because we're here undocumented, we already break a law, we act in fear. And that's one thing we really have to understand, is that we have rights. Again, is to remain silent. You don't have to open your door unless they have a warrant that is signed by a judge. Also, you don't have to consent to any searches.
And I just wanted to add to that some of the tricks that they use. So they'll say citizens on this side, green card holders on this side, someone with no documents over here. So then, again, you know, because we come from countries where we come from many dictatorships and militarized governments, you know, we have to obey to law enforcement. We don't question authority. So even having like little vignettes using AI to kind of carry us through these different scenarios, whether it's you're at work or whether you're at home, you're at the hospital, dropping your kids off at school, we need to break this taboo that we have across all communities, which is that we don't want to speak about our status. We don't want to speak about the fact that there's a legal issue in hand, and we have to make this part of our conversations when we're eating together, when we're going to church, when we're out in the community. What if? Nobody wants to talk about the worst case scenario because they're so fearful, but I think we need to educate and kind of Monday quarterback this, where we're going through different plays, we're going through different scenarios, we're kind of constantly talking about it so that people can feel more comfortable when the situation does arise.
Thank you so much. Do you have anything to add, Alexis?
I think the only thing that I would add that makes, I think, the tips that you've heard so important is one of the changes that we've seen at the national level is a change around respect for certain spaces where people have often felt safe, right? So where ICE activity has not been happening. So that's in churches, in schools, in healthcare facilities, hospitals. And so people have, for many years, felt like these were places I could go where I would not encounter ICE or I would not encounter law enforcement. And that is eroding, that no longer exists. And so the impact of that, we've seen families not sending their kids to school, people not accessing healthcare because of a fear of encountering ICE. So when we are in those spaces, it's really important to heed that guidance and that advice.
Thank you. So we have a couple of questions, and then we'll open up for Q&A. I know online we have a few that are starting to trickle in. And so the next question here is, you know, there've been a good amount of uptick for notarios in the state, right? So people who are posing as immigration attorneys, but who are not, and they're really messing up people's cases. Could you all give some advice about how do you find an attorney and know that they're reputable?
Well, the first place to look is the State Bar Association. In Connecticut, you can search and see if a lawyer is licensed by going to the judicial court website and search the attorney tab. And you can put in the person's name, and it will show if the person is active or if they're suspended or if they're disbarred. That is in Connecticut, but then again, in some other states, they all have a way to find out if the lawyers are licensed. In every state, you go to their state bar and you can find out. Or call, if you don't know how to use the website, just call them and said, I had an appointment with this attorney, John. Is John licensed in the state of New York? They will tell you yes, and they will tell you no. They'll tell you if John was licensed any time in New York or if John is disbarred. Because we had where an attorney was disbarred in New York, and he opened a different LLC and started to work under that LLC. This is an attorney who had filed over 3,500 VAWA cases and only had one that was approved. And he was sued by about 15 or 20 different clients because he would charge them like $3,500 to start their paperwork and nothing ever filed. And he was just continuing to deceive them. He would file these applications, but they were always going to get rejected. They're always going to get back for RFEs because he was just doing a shell application. No evidence. There are people I had seen where a client was divorced, but they never lived in New York, but they got a divorce in New York. Because that attorney was doing not so nice things, right?
So I think to add too is, you have to sign a contract with anyone who you're going to work with. And in that case, I mean, he was even fabricating evidence. So the minute someone tells you to lie, that should be a red flag.
But then not to cut you off, but it's not even just attorneys that are doing. Yeah. There are people, because in our communities, right? We have our community lawyers. We'll tell you, go see John. John is good. John knows how to fill out immigration papers. It's just paperwork. Everybody can fill it out. But John is not licensed. John only knew how to do 2 papers, but now things have changed. The applications have changed and has evolved. Immigration has evolved. But John doesn't know what he's doing because he only knows how to do the paper from 20 years ago, but he's getting paid anyways. You're giving him his money. He's not going to turn down money. John loves money, so John is not going to say no to money. But John is setting you up for failure because John is answering questions wrongfully on the application, and then when you are now at a place with immigration officer, there's no John's signature. It's your signature alone. And these notarios will not sign the papers. Only you alone. They're not signing the part saying they're the preparer. And when you go in front of an immigration officer, it's you answering the question. They're going to say, but you signed it. And you have to understand that not everyone is out for your good, but it's always best if you understand your rights and know, like, okay, I'm going to see someone, but if they're telling me something that's kind of off, let me get a second opinion. It's always best to get a second opinion. Because the same thing, lawyers are like doctors. If you go to the doctor and the doctor say, you have cancer, you might, well, I don't feel like that. Okay, no, I want a second opinion. I don't believe that. I can't take that. You're gonna go see another doctor to get a second opinion. It's the same thing when it comes to immigration. Don't just rely on what one person say to you. Find out a second option, second opinion. Because a lot of times, again, when we go cheap, it costs you more. Because a notarial may charge you $1,000 to fill out a paper, and then they screw you up. Now you got to go see a lawyer, or you're facing an immigration judge, which is going to cost you maybe $10,000, $15,000, or $20,000.
And we've been seeing this a lot more with asylum, frivolous asylum filings, where people have been here 15, 20 years, and they go to a notario, and then they would help them to file a dubious asylum claim. We've even had cases in which notario convinced the family to have the child state that he was homosexual as far as his protected claim, so that the whole family could get a work permit. So it's always about people's vulnerabilities, and they always go at what people want. People want to be able to work. And these notarios all over the country are targeting families exactly because of that work permit. We oftentimes have the discussions with the families that, we cannot forget our values, our morals, or the truth, just because we want to work legally. There's other ways of doing it, which I'm sure we're going to get into, which we discuss, helping families open LLCs, going around different avenues in which to still achieve a legal status without committing fraud. Because once that fraud is discovered, you're going to be permanently barred.
Thank you all so much. So what I'd love to do is open it up for any questions in the audience, and I have a couple of questions online. But does anybody have any questions here? We have one over here. We have two questions.
Asante sana kwa nyinyi wote, na tunatafuta kufanya kwa kupatia hapa. Tulikuwa tunataka kuuliza swali, kama kuna mtu mwenye iko na swali hapa, kama wengine wenye wanafuatilia kwa kupitia mtandao.
What role does local law enforcement have, and what tools do we have to fight back against ICE? Can they just physically take you without you answering any questions, without you, they're essentially profiling you? I mean, I've been watching this play out, and as someone who would like to know, if I see this in real time, like, what can I do when I see this? So I have two questions. What is the role of ICE? Can local law enforcement intervene? And what can local citizens do when they bear witness to these taking of people off the street, which is what we're seeing happen?
Thank you for that question, Babs. And I think also Karen had one afterwards. So this has been happening all across the state, all across the nation, and it's been frustrating. I'm happy to weigh in, but I think I'll pass it to Alexis, and then we can go down. Oh, okay, I'll go first. Yeah, sure. So, in the state, we do have the Trust Act. We've been working really hard on that piece of legislation, but unfortunately, there's not a lot that local law enforcement can do, right? When it comes to federal agency officers, they do have quite a lot of leeway. ICE, they're not police officers, and the types of ethics and what you might see and expect from a police officer, it's not such that the same as ICE officers. And so, for instance, identifying oneself with a badge number, that's not something that is required, right? And so you actually have a lot of states that are developing legislation that says any federal officer is required to identify themselves and not to use face coverings. That's all new. This is unprecedented. We've never seen this level of I don't know, display from federal officers like this. But Alexis, anybody else?
Unakuta unahisi kuwajua kwa kuangalia kwenye kadi zao ama service card.
We recently had a meeting with chief of police from one of the local towns, and their hands are tied.
masteti
as far
zimoja
as
zimoja,
federal
lakini
law
wanakuwa
enforcement.
wanasema kama kila
And
wote hawapashe
it's very
hawapashe
contentious because a lot of
kuvaa
police
mamaski
departments
ama ingine
across the
kitu yenye
nation are
natuma
afraid
aweze
of losing
kuona
federal
sura
funding
yake
if
ama
they don't
kumuona
comply. And we're
vizuri na
seeing that they
kujua
are going
kitambulisho.
after sanctuary states or cities, if you want to call them that, in the sense of, funding for roads, for healthcare, for education. So once they start going at folks financially, you're going to have to cave in unless you're able to get money from other sources. So it's really creating a situation in which it's splitting our community in the sense that maybe local law enforcement may want to do more, but they are limited by what they can actually do.
Thank you for that. Anybody else?
Well, because ICE is, again, it's a federal law that they're enforcing. So they're the Immigration Enforcement, Custom Enforcement Agency. They're like the federal police. So they can go into any state because they're enforcing a federal law. And because the Constitution pretty much says federal law kind of trumps states' laws most of the time. With the police departments, they will move on like a relaxed stance. Even in sanctuary cities, they're relaxed because of again, they need the federal government when they need investigation help. Sometimes, a lot of the times, the little town or state, their police officers are getting help from the FBI in certain situations. So they don't want to overstep their boundaries in a sense, because when they need help, they're gonna say, well, you weren't cooperating with us, so we don't have to help you. So it's balancing our citizens within our towns and how we're going to be effectively managing them. So that's why you see police officers are not really going ahead and stopping ICE from walking around the city in mass and taking people.
And just to add to that, something that we are seeing and that we're concerned about is community leaders possibly being charged with crimes such as human smuggling and trafficking, or harboring certain aliens, harboring undocumented individuals, transporting undocumented persons, obstruction of justice, perjury or false statements, conspiracy. So this is coming down the pipeline. And as a community, how are we going to be organized and ready to how we can protect our families?
Yeah, and I would add to that. A lot of organizations are now looking to develop policies that basically address if ICE comes to your organization, to your place of business, what are the things that you kind of have in place? What are the steps to address that, right? So a lot of it goes to what Charnette was talking about with, do they have a warrant to come in that's signed appropriately? But that's also something to really keep in mind, and that's something that we have done at our office, and other organizations I know have developed those. And really it's about kind of protecting, whether it's customers coming in, whether it's clients, whoever's coming into your office, but also think about the people that may be working in an environment where you are, and that's just something to keep in mind.
Some of what's also in play here, and thank you all, the lawyers got their flow right now. So I'm an activist, right? And part of what compelled me to at least to say something and be supportive of the Trust Act here in Connecticut. Part of what was in play there was to say, leaning into what this state would ultimately pass, to say local law enforcement they don't have to support the federal. They don't have to, they can just say, y'all come on through, and we're gonna just sit in the cut and wait till y'all done. We know here in Connecticut, they're short-staffed. They're trying to hire up right now, right? So they got very few people. They're using it as, they rolled up in Weathersfield. Round the corner from where I know well, I go on that street a lot. And they come in kind of heavy, right? These are all performative, they play acting, right? They showing up in a mass, they're really trying to do fear. They're fear mongering. Most often you don't hear they rolled up, they detained some folk and they let them go. You don't hear that part. What you see is the show that they flashed. And of course, they're doing that as a tactic to fearmonger, right? They're working with us in certain kinds of ways. So I would hope that as we as community, says, you say, what can I do? What can I see? When I see something, what's my stance? I think one part is, we got these little powerful tools in our hands. We can do a little something with that. But I would also say these are the conversations that we need to have with our state lawmakers, some of our local folk to say, listen, this is not the kind of way I want you all to behave, and use our community voice and maybe gather with some other folk so you're not isolated. But that we're together saying, we don't want to roll like that. If they got a reason to do whatever they is, we don't have to necessarily undergird that or even be there. Y'all just do your work, right? And there are some cities, now I understand there's no more sanctuary cities. They don't want us to use that term or that language, right? But there are places and spaces that did a lot of work in years gone by. And I would hope that goodwill continues to persist, even though we got to change language, we got to do other kinds of things and use some other tactics. That's just one black man's opinion.
Thank you so much. So I think to Babs's point, and then I'll pass it to you, Karen, taking videos, right, and there are very specific ways to do this, right? You're not supposed to obstruct whatever operation is occurring legally, right? So recording what has happened, being sure not to capture people's faces because you want to be respectful of folks who are being picked up, and asking an officer if they would identify themselves, right, and giving sufficient space. On a website called ctimmigrants.org, there are a number of videos that kind of show you how to do this and how to record it, especially if officers are not identifying themselves. Folks, what they're starting to do is that this is literally a kidnapping. They take that evidence and go to the police and report that you've witnessed a kidnapping. But I do want to acknowledge that this feels really heavy. There's over $100 billion that's now being allocated to federal enforcement on immigration. And so it's going to be an uphill battle, but we really have to figure out ways to not only defend, right, but what is our offensive strategy? Karen.
Yeah, no, thank you all so much for this, and I appreciate the really concrete tips you were providing for somebody if somebody knocks at your door and that kind of thing. And then I was thinking about, how the efforts you went in to make sure there was language accessibility for this meeting. My question is there a federal requirement? Do people need to be able to speak to somebody in a language that they understand when they're knocking at your door? Is there any obligation that federal officials be communicating to somebody in a way that they can understand when they're in this heightened anxiety and fearful state and demanding these things of them? Is there an obligation that they're able to communicate in a language that is familiar to somebody?
I wouldn't necessarily say there's an obligation, but from every encounter that we have had with any clients when they deal with immigration, they always have someone translating in the language that they are proficient in, so they understand their rights. Because at the end of the day, they're going to also have to sign some documents, signing these documents. So they are interpreting, whether it's in Spanish or Asian Creole or Swahili. Because if a person is standing there, I don't speak any English, and can say, I don't understand you in English, that officer wants to make sure that the person understands what they're saying to them. Because at the end of the day, there are ways you can use what was done against the officer in some way, in some point of saying they weren't properly, especially if they put them in immigration court, they didn't properly receive proper notice in certain ways. So they're gonna always try to make sure that the person understands them in a language, because when they want to take their testimony So they're not going to just ask them a bunch of questions in English and write it down and say, have you signed it? They're going to want a person to speak in their natural language. So it's not that they have to, but they always take steps to make sure that what they're trying to communicate to the person is communicated properly.
Watching these videos, you don't see that. You don't see any effort made to be communicating to somebody in that moment of arrest or detention in the language. And I not immigration related at all, but I ran a federally funded housing program for decades, and the federal law was that it was my responsibility as the housing provider to ensure that any performer or anything that I was presenting to the person had to be in a language that they understood. And it's like it feels like a place of advocacy if that is not the law for these immigration related matters currently.
Well, once people are detained in the ICE facilities, they do have the right to request for a detainee manual, and that will be in whatever language, I'm assuming all languages, and hopefully it will be available for them. And that explains their rights, access to legal resources.
Because one thing that we have to understand too, we're seeing the small clips of videos of somebody just being running up, taking this person, but by the time they put that person in handcuffs and put them in a car, they are going to translate into a language that they understand. It's just that we're seeing just clippets of stuff and we're not seeing the entire process. Because I can hold the person, I can come to you, grab you, and take you in detention until you tell me what documents you have to prove your citizenship. So that doesn't mean that they can't arrest you. You're just not answering any of their questions. You're just telling them your name. That's about it. You have to tell them. Or if you were driving, you produce your driver's license and registration and your insurance. But if you're asking a question and you're not giving them the answer, and one other thing you can always say, am I free to go? If they say no, they're going to detain you, then they're going to ask you more questions, and they will translate that in your language to make sure. But there's the thing with social media, we're only seeing snippets and snippets. And sometimes I do believe that people edit it with AI to make it look a little bit different. Don't get me wrong, there are some violent encounters that occurred, but sometimes some other videos that we do see are edited.
I just feel like the tools that we have do not meet the moment.
Absolutely.
And that for me, that is the bigger problem. That on any given day, yes, I have the right to remain, all the things, but this is something else, and we don't have anything to push back on the something else. That's my concern, that we don't have enough tools to combat this heightened level of meanness and disrespect for humanity. We don't have any, we have ordinary tools for extraordinary moments. And for me, that is problematic. So I'm not hearing, not from y'all, but from folks who are making decisions about how to go on the offense, because every day we are besieged with some new level of foolishness, and our hands are going up in the air. It's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And we're seeing people snatched off the street. AI be damned. We're seeing people in real time harmed. I'm seeing it in my city. I live in New Haven. I see it. What once you could hide people in churches, you can no longer do that. People are saying, people are showing up at schools, in medical facilities, at people's restaurants, and all this kind of stuff. We do not have the necessary tools to meet this moment. And I need the Justice League to create some tools to fight back. That's what I need.
So at this, yes.
No,
we definitely agree with you. And at this point, we know it's prevention. It's about seeking help from an attorney beforehand, not waiting until you're detained to then, we have seen so many cases over the past year where families are so stressed out. We have families who are deported right now. We have children who've been separated from their families. And it's very challenging when you see those kind of situations. We sometimes feel at our office like it's like a roller coaster. Like one moment we're giving somebody great news. We just got their green card. We just got their citizenship. We just got their work permit, their social. And then we are telling someone, hey, you've been ordered removed. So for us is very challenging doing the work, but it's always about having people seek help, explore what options they have, whether it's humanitarian immigration, whether it's family immigration, whether it's business immigration, whether it is now something that we're offering is going to Canada. We can have you speak to a Canadian attorney and see if there are options for you to go study in Canada, for you to go work in Canada or invest in Canada as another option. We tell people, hey, we have 3 doors for you. Do something to fight here in the US, plan to go back home, or go to Canada.
Thank you for that. And I just want to say, to Bab's point, absolutely, absolutely. That's where we are right now. And people in the Zoom chat are saying things like, these rights don't seem to be useful in the present moment with immigrants being essentially kidnapped and whisked away to detention centers and prisons. So that is exactly the similar sentiment that we're seeing with folks on the ground. And it makes it quite difficult because it's true, we don't have sufficient tools. So we got 2 questions here, but Shernette, did you want to make a point? Yeah.
Yes, I'm good? Okay, yeah. I do understand what she's saying. The tools, they are there, they were from any regular time. In today's moment where we're living in, it's not regular time. These tools are there as helping people so you don't panic, but it's not completely there to brace off immigration completely. The only issue to solve this problem is our congressmen and women, the ones that we send to Washington. They're the one that needs to make the change, because Congress is the one can make changes to immigration law. Congress can stop the president from what he's doing, but they're not doing anything. So it's kind of like you just have to still reinforce people saying, these are your rights. You may seem like it's not working, but still use them. It still works because you're sharpening your knowledge with your rights. Not somebody's telling you, you gotta go, you gotta answer my questions now. No, I'm not gonna answer any questions. You wanna detain me? Go ahead, detain me. But I'm not gonna answer any questions until I have my lawyer present. So I understand that they're not seem like they're useful at this moment, but it's still the tools that we have, because at this moment, Congress is not doing anything to stop the president.
I was going to say, I feel a bit of the jadedness as well. I too, this moment seems to be extraordinary time, and I feel like we came to the fight with the wrong stuff. They got far more weaponry. They thought it through. They made a plan, and I feel like we don't have no plan. One of the things that I'm also mindful of is what you've just named. I feel like there is movement afoot in Congress, not the right movement. I feel like there are folk who are talking. They ain't talking on our behalf. And in large measure, and I'm going to name this, we had a representative in the Connecticut delegation a number of months ago voted on the other side of the aisle to censure Congressman Al Green from Texas. I know his name very well, and was in a meeting with him while he ubba-dubba-dubbered. Ubba-dubba-dubba. And the community that I was with didn't get him, didn't hold him accountable. So a couple of us we censured him and got less than 100 people to join us. So let me just say, if we gonna fight, if we're gonna do the work, we gotta do the work somehow. We gotta do the work on the same page together. I mean, we don't have any literal ability to censure that particular congressman of the Connecticut delegation. But we sure had a lot of neighborhood power to say, you're not representing us, sir. And yet, I feel like okay, y'all know what I'm saying.
Thanks, Bishop Selders. So we have a question. We have Sonia back there. We have Kirk. Okay, we got a lot of questions. Go ahead.
So, kind of to her question, you know, why would someone who's undocumented now go to an appointment that they still have? Why would any of us still follow any of the existing laws today, knowing that your rights may not be honored in the way in which the law is supposed to do it? We have a number of community members who we know are undocumented. If I were in a process of trying to get either my legal status, or I was here legally and then somehow they suddenly changed it where now I'm illegal because they took the status away, which we know is happening to quite a few people. Why would I go through any other process at this point from a legal standpoint? I don't think I would have my family member go to an appointment only to be snatched and disappeared and not knowing if they would come home.
Definitely. Thank you, Sonia. So I did want to highlight a similar question on the chat where people are saying folks are getting picked up during green card appointments. Last week in not in New Haven, but a different town, I think it was in East Hartford, there was an Afghan interpreter that was resettled by IRIS. He was a special immigrant visa holder and got picked up by ICE, right? We are seeing more and more trends of people who have status. And so to Sonia's question, if the laws are not being followed by the individual people, by we the people, how do we kind of reconcile those two things? And that might just be super rhetorical, but it's a question.
Well, I do understand the fear of not going to an appointment because we get a call every day. Oh, I'm not going to go to my biometric appointment because people are getting detained there. I'm not going to go to this interview because we're being detained. Every case is different. So if your family member has a process started, but he or she was never ordered removed, she shouldn't miss the appointment, or he shouldn't miss his appointment. Continue the process because the system is still working. As long as his case is good and he goes to his interview and answers his questions, he is going to, and there's no other issue, he's going to get his papers. However, if a person has a detention, an immigration order removed from 1999, but they never left the country, and now they remarry someone, and now that person is petitioned for them, and they call in for an interview, yes, I'm going to say, don't go. You might want to rethink that one, because you're going to be set up. Because you're going to get detained because they're going to be using that prior order. That's what they've been doing with a lot of those people that are being picked up at interviews or getting picked up at check-in with ICE check-in, is because they had a prior order of deportation and they never left the country. So now ICE has their information. They can know, okay, they're going for an interview on March 10th. I'm going to be there March 10th to pick them up, because I've seen where a person filed for asylum, went for their asylum interview. They were detained because there was a prior order. So that is a situation. If the person also got recently arrested, that is grounds for ICE to pick them up, even at an interview. So it's all going to be on a case-by-case basis what is going on in that person's immigration case history.
So, we're still relying on due process, that the person does give themselves an opportunity to fight, to defend themselves. And like Sharnette said, we see so many fake news on social media or incomplete stories. So we really have to do a FOIA. Typically, when someone comes into the office, we want to know their entire immigration history so that we can be in the offensive end. We could explore what may come up and how we can go ahead and create viable options for those people. We have had clients who have marijuana convictions, for instance, or DUI, or domestic violence, and those may be factors that you may not see in a social media highlight, but that may play a factor into that enforcement.
So I think one of the important things as a takeaway is that if you are an immigrant, right, if you are going through a process, it's important to be upfront, completely upfront with your attorney, because it makes it really difficult, right, to be able to represent you if the attorney doesn't have all of the facts. And you could get in a lot of trouble if you had not just, given some information prior. So thank you for that. But absolutely acknowledging that things are tough, things that are happening are unprecedented. But we have a question in the back.
I've been sitting here, replaying this since you mentioned about telling the officers, I do not give you permission to enter my home. I do want to honor my right to remain silent, right? But up front, when there is a significant language barrier, like we know a lot of police officers in heavily populated Latino areas, there might always be somebody Spanish speaking, but when it's not Spanish as that language, how do you implement your rights? How do you say no? How do you do that without escalating the situation and them not understanding that they're saying no? Right? So how do you prevent the situation from escalating and potentially even becoming violent if they're attempting to exercise their legal rights, but there's a significant language barrier with the law enforcement?
I just want to go back to Babs's question because it'll help me answer your question. One of the things that I think the moment calls for is kind of a multi-layered approach to what we're seeing. So there is the individual representation that needs to happen for people who are being impacted. There's advocacy that needs to happen kind of at the state and national level. And then there's like an education, informing, empowering people approach that also needs to be taken. So organizations like the ACLU and other national groups have done a really good job of creating materials for people who might be impacted in different ways. And so one of the materials that has been developed, and actually I think we have some over there on the table, are what we call red cards. And so those red cards are for the exact situations that you're talking about. So if someone comes to your home and you don't want to answer questions, you can hand them a red card that basically informs you of all of your rights and lets them know that you're not going to respond to any of their questions. And what's been really, I think, beautiful about those red cards is they have been translated into a number of different languages. I don't know how many off the top of my head, but many different languages. And so they can be utilized for the individual, so they know exactly what they say, how to present them, that kind of thing.
No, it's me right here.
One second.
Good evening. My question is, what should someone who is documented do? Right? I feel like I was reading an article, I think last week, that talked about people with green cards should have a plan as well for getting picked up by ICE. So how does that work if you have permanent residency status and you get picked up by ICE? And what should someone with a green card be planning to do, if anything? Because I feel maybe we're walking around like, oh, that doesn't impact me or whatever, but what should a person be doing? And the second part to that question, I have a relative who wants to self-deport. What should that person be doing to prepare for that?
Sounds like an immigration attorney question.
So let me take your first part of your question. If a person has a green card, and you say if they get picked up by ICE, correct? So in that scenario, I can think of multiple ways. Either the person had gotten arrested since they became a green card holder, and now ICE found out about that arrest, that they're detained that person. Maybe that person should not voluntarily just leave, but go in front of a judge. because as a green card holder, you can go in front of a judge and fight your case in front of an immigration judge. There may be option, basically saying cancellation of removal based on the person being a green card holder, and different, looking at their history. Since they've been in the US, was that one arrest was the one time they got arrested, but they've been paying their taxes. They have family members that are citizens. So you can look at all those different things to say, these are positive factors more than this one arrest. Depends on the arrest still, right? That's what would bring a person who was a green card holder into detention, immigration detention per se. Or if the person had a conditional green card, which is a 2-year green card, and then now they are no longer with that spouse, and immigration make a determination saying they had a sham marriage, then that can put that person in immigration proceeding as well. And it's gonna always be, depends on, again, the immigration attorney investigation of that person to see what other option is there for that person. So it's not, in a sense, as a green card holder, you can never get, it's just don't get arrested. That's pretty much what it is. It's like, don't get arrested in some sense, because if you don't if you have your 10-year green card, don't get arrested, because that's what can put you in deportation if you get arrested, right? Or if you have a green card and it's beyond 5 years, it applies to be a citizen. So then you feel a little bit more of a comfort level because you're now a citizen. So those are the things for a green card holder.
And you have to add to that, make sure you're paying your child support, make sure you're paying your taxes.
And paying your taxes. It's just shows, because if anything happens, you are showing that you're a good moral character. You're a citizen in all sense. You're a U.S. citizen. You're doing the work. You're just doing what you need to be doing as a permanent resident in the country. If the family member who we're talking about self-deportation, that person has to think about why they want to self-deport. Did they seek any options about their immigration status? Maybe they did at one point, maybe 5 years ago, they saw a lawyer. The lawyer said there's no option. But this person is working for an employer who they're working 60 hours a week, but paying for 20 hours or 30 hours. They're abusing them, giving them only 5 minutes for lunch. They can't even go to the bathroom without asking someone. Like, different situation in that scenario, that person is a victim of wage theft and could be under humanitarian, file for a T visa on her own based on that abuse. I'm using her as general, but based on the abuse from that employer. Or in their home, she's married and the husband is a green card holder or a citizen, and every time he said, I'm gonna file for you. Oh, I'm not gonna do it today. Oh, I'm gonna call immigration on you. You're gonna get deported. She could file for what they call a VAWA, Violence Against Women Act. So there may be options for your family member who want to self-deport. Before she make that decision, just seek out a consultation with an attorney to see if there's option for her or him.
Thank you so much. We're running out of time, but we have a question here.
Yes, you mentioned the red card, and I wanted to know if that was connected to the red folder, and if it is, how? And I would like for you to talk more about the red folder, and if that is something that is truly beneficial, and are there any dangers attached to that, the red folder?
Thank you. I can help to answer that. So the red card was made by ILRC, which stands for, I actually don't know. ILRC, I forget what they, Legal Center, perhaps?
Immigration
Thank you.
Resource Center.
So that was made by a national group, and the red folder is something that's a little bit more local. And the idea of the red folder is to prepare people for preparing a stay of removal. So let's say they get picked up, right? What are the types of documents that are necessary for an attorney to have to prepare that for them? And the same is true for if they're eligible for bond. Now, we see in the news, we've seen lots of memos that came out in the last 2 weeks that's actually preventing people from being able to request bail, which is a huge deal. And what it can lead to is having more, a lengthier time of being detained. So that's some pretty scary stuff. But the red folder serves as for having people to pull together their items. Because imagine if you get detained, right? It's difficult to find all your documents and to sign it off. So the idea is, how do I put all of the most pertinent immigration documentation in one place so that if you are detained, that an attorney can pick it up and be ready to run with it. And we have some in the back table, and for folks who are online, we'll send you over a link if you would like to have one of these folders. Thank you.
The danger is, so I'm not sure where it is in its development, but I know at one point there were databases that were supposed to be created with all of the names of immigrants in it and all of the names of the volunteers working with it in it. And I had a concern that the database that even was in existence with names would not maybe be a good idea. I don't know. Can you say more about that?
Sure thing. So this is a local effort that's being referred to, and so there's a lot of talk about what does it look like to create a secure database that lives within a law firm, right? And so it's not using different types of forms like with Google, but sort of like a local database that's not able to be accessible and that retains client attorney privilege. So data is really scary these days, you guys. There's data being shared from the IRS to ICE, from the Medicaid office to ICE. This just happened last week. So it's some pretty scary stuff, and then over $100 billion going into enforcement that uses AI and all kinds of advanced searches. Our digital security, not just for immigration, but really for everybody who lives in America, is definitely changing. So I think we have time for one more question. Okay, we have Sonia.
I just quickly want to go, I appreciated the answer regarding that there are nuances with people who would be fearful of possibly going in. But what can families do if they are at risk of being detained and potentially deported? I'm struggling to make sure that we're able to help our community members not only be prepared from a red folder standpoint, but if you have assets here. I've been watching some YouTube videos where folks have, they purchase homes or they have cars and they have a bank account and other things. Like, what are some things we can tell families to do? Or in the case of some of the cases that we're aware of, making sure that someone has legal authority to help them with things that they may not have access to if they get detained. I'm just curious, what can we tell our community members to prepare for?
Well, in that particular situation, as you do say, yes, we have family that are facing detention or being deported, and they have homes, they have children that are U.S. citizens, and they have 401ks on their job, because one way or the other they had some legal documents and then they had no status after a while. The best option is to create a power of attorney. Have a trusted source who you can give power of attorney over your control over your finances or your assets, that should you be detained, that person can sell those assets and transfer the funds to you. Also, if you have minor children, is to create a temporary guardianship, allowing someone else to take care of your child if you are detained. Also, create a family plan. Have a conversation with your family, your children. Be open and help them to understand that if one day you come home from school, mommy is not home, this is where all the documents are. Call auntie so-and-so. And they will know exactly who the doctors are, who is a dentist, who they pay rent to, which banks they have bank accounts, because for most of us, we have more than one bank accounts in multiple banks. So having all those things created, it's almost like you're creating a trust or a will. You're planning for, in the sense of the estate planning, you're planning for if you'd pass, but in the same thing in immigration, this section, you're creating everything that should that detention happen, my family know where all my documents are, if I have an immigration A number, they know my A number, that they can call an attorney and say, this is my cousin's A number, so you can call ICE and say if they're there. Different things, just having those, that it's called family preparedness, readiness. That if it happens, you know, I have someone who can sell my property that I trust, because a lot of times some people will do it and then they'll take the money because you can't come back in the US. They say, oh, I'm gonna keep this. But you have to use it to someone you really trust, because a power of attorney, when you sign that, that person can act as you immediately. So you have to trust that person that you are going to give that power to.
Thank you so much. So Alexis, you can go ahead and answer. And then the last question, I actually would love for Bishop Selders to kind of close us out. And it's just kind of, you know, how do we fight back together? I know you talked a little bit about that, but Alexis, and then would love to hear from you, Bishop.
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that Charnette talked about in terms of the family preparedness and power of attorney and all of that is really important. And that's really, I think, an example of the ways in which that all of our community can come together. One of the things that has happened over the last couple of months is specific clinics for the family preparedness paperwork and documents to be completed. So a lot of immigration attorneys and non-immigration attorneys have helped people kind of prepare those documents and get them ready. And so we need spaces for those things to happen, right? So local churches is a place where those can happen, schools, this space, and that's another way I think that we can collaborate and come together as a community.
Thank you. Bishop Selders?
Lord have mercy. I tell you what, if y'all allow me to be a preacher for a minute, I'm reminded of a passage of scripture that says, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. All right? Can I vernacularize that just for a bit? I believe for this time now, yeah, we got to do what's right even though we might be afraid. All right? There might be some fear. We don't know what, I'm trying not to name call, but we don't know what in the world they're going to do next. Every day is something new. Every day is something illegal that they now got at least 6-3 majority vote on the Supreme Court. So we can't tell what they're going to do, but Pamela and I, my beloved and I, we're often like, I got to choose what's right. Got to choose what's right. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power. We do have agency, folks. We do. We cannot just be, even though it might lock you up and you just, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. We do have some ability, all right? And so, and we got to lean on the folk that do have some strength sometimes to do that. Power, love, L-O-V-E. This is the time now. I'm hearing Dr. King in my mind that the deep abiding love for each other in community. Right now, part of this that's happening is set to divide us. Can't y'all tell? Can't you see the devices? So let's be intentional. And y'all, please don't hate me. Here in New England, 25 years worth, I have found that we don't work really across too many divides. Folk in New Haven stay in New Haven. Folk in Hartford stay in Hartford. Bridgeport folk just... Do you know anybody in New London? Willimantic. He raised his hand, okay. Gotcha, bro. You all know, you hear what I'm saying. We have lots of divides, and you know what I'm saying too. We have lots of ways in which we find ways not to. Hamden and New Haven don't talk sometime. Okay, let me talk about Weathersfield and Hartford, because I know that one better than the other one as well. So power, love, sound mind. For me, it's now the time to be in some sessions where we're doing some of what we've just done, some strategy talk. And to talk, for real. And there aren't really simple, clear, straightforward answers. I wish it were. But in my experience, it never has been. It's been complicated for the last 200 and some odd years of the United States being a nation, quite frankly, for which black people didn't have laws that white people were bound to respect. We named that already, and I can't tell if they're respecting them now. All right, when Black Lives Matter, the whole idea of Black Lives Matter was in response to the shooting and the killing of black folk on the street by law enforcement, folk who were set out to protect and to serve. So I experienced this moment as an opportunity for us to dig deep into our wells of faith. And I'm not trying to be churchy or not trying to be religious or super religious, but I am saying that we have a place and space to go. We have some resources that are not just on this plane, but they're on another plane. And I think we got to access that stuff right now and do that in the context of community together. And I'm committed. I wonder if there are 2 or 3 other folk that's committed to go cross some of these divides and do some of the work we got to do to help each other, resource each other, and wage a particular kind of resistance against that which is unlawful. And I believe this is my final point for me. I got a little bit of hope that we come from people who survived great tragedies. And so let's gird up and let's go.
Thank you, everyone. I know we're over time. I just want to say this is just the first of more conversations. We've never done this in our community before. And so thank you for your patience as we kind of move along together. I hope y'all have a great night, and let's do this together. Thank you.
Fall in love. Oh, oh, oh. Everywhere I go, always by my side. Lonely won't let me fall in love. I heard him say, Mama, take this badge off of me.
Just really quick, I just wanted to do a quick word. Thank you, to give a round of applause to the panelists one more time. So thank you all. Just wanted to let you know how much we appreciate you spending time with us. I personally, again, want to thank Connecticut Students for a Dream and Tabitha, as well as Kay and Jack and Faith Acts as well for helping us all put this together. There's plenty of good Jamaican food. So I'm going to pull out the to-go boxes, and you're all required to take a to-go box home, okay? Just know we're here for you. This space is for y'all. This space is for everybody in this room. So just know when you need space or you need something, just know we're here to help support, okay? Thank you. A round of applause to the team that took care of all the tech stuff. They held us down. So thank you.